I'm going to talk about stories of how we can bring about change in India. Rather, not stories, but a journey that each of us must take if we need to transform our country. We are a country of 1.3 billion people and a million problems. Independence Day is just around the corner, our 71st Independence Day. And since independence, we've actually come a long way. But we have a lot more to do. Out of 49 large economies, India ranks 45 or lower in every single parameter of development. We are 62nd among 113 countries ranked for rule of law. We are 40th in 137 countries ranked for the Global Competitiveness Index. And even after successive governments' attempts, we are still 100 out of 190 countries in terms of ease of doing business. We have a massive jobs crisis facing us. Every year, there are 13 million new entrants in the job market, which means more than 1 million per month. You know, people like yourselves who come of age and are ready to join the workforce, but there just aren't enough jobs. We are witnessing unprecedented rapid urbanization. The city's infrastructure, however, is not equipped to handle this inflow of migrants. There is also a lot of avoidable suffering in India, which makes me very sad. In 2015 alone, there were 1 million children under the age of 5 who died. That's worse than many sub-Saharan African countries in terms of infant mortality. Nearly 65% children between the ages of 1 and 5 don't get completely immunized. And even in this day and age, and you'd be surprised to know this, even in this day and age, we have 12 million annual cases of malarial infection. Now, you'd think that I'm here to count our problems. I'm actually not. In fact, as someone said, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And I do believe in the potential of our wonderful nation. But changing India is like running a marathon. And we must train hard to run this marathon. We must all run this marathon together. But what does this marathon look like, you ask? Well, I speak from my experiences of the role I play at Takshashila Institution. We educate people in public policy and governance. So here is an eightfold path that we can follow to transform India. You will notice that as we go along, the focus shifts from, we zoom out from working on individuals, on yourselves, to actually changing the society at large. So here goes. The first step in our journey or in our training plan is to not wear labels. And by label, I mean it's a sticker we acquire, and then we spend all our energies in trying to act in a manner that justifies this label. I'm a leftist, I'm a right-winger, I'm a Barcelona fan, I'm a Java programming ninja. By thinking like this, you are acquiring labels. But what's wrong with that, you ask me? Well, everything. Once we acquire a label, we spend all our energies in trying to justify it. We lose our objectivity, we lose our capacity for critical thought. We are likely to defend these labels at all costs. We are likely to reject good ideas because they conflict with the labels. So, what must you do? How do you know you are about to acquire a label? Well, ask yourselves, am I about to join a fan club? Will I be required to fit in? Will I have to follow established practices, worship established idols? And if the answer is yes, then stop yourselves. Choose instead to call yourself a football fan. a programmer, a scientist, an algorithm geek, or a policy wonk, if you will. You know, these are descriptors and not labels. If you are a football fan, you will objectively decide which team was best on the field, not if you are a Barcelona fan. And if you're a policy analyst, you can objectively weigh the merits and demerits of a scheme, let's say like the universal basic income, but not if you are a leftist or a right-winger. So shedding your labels is the first step. The next step is to watch out for biases in yourselves and in others. Now all of us as human beings are prone to cognitive biases. Biases such as the social desirability bias. We all want to be liked by people around us, apart from a few misanthropes, of course. So we do and say things that make us likable. In fact, we go to the extent of saying and doing things in public that do not match our personal beliefs. Private truths and public lies. In fact, that's the reason why opinion polls often get it wrong. I'll give you another example. Think of a man who has a 14-year-old daughter and he thinks to himself, I have this 14-year-old daughter. I do not really want to marry her. But I think everyone in my community expects me to do so. And so I must, because I want to be liked by my community members. Ironically, everyone in the community thinks like that. And we see that rigid customs continue. Take another example of a bias, the confirmation bias. Now, we all like to read things that agree with our previously held beliefs. We like talking to people who have the same preconceived notion as ours. And thus form echo chambers and bubbles. The discourse gets highly polarized. Social media has actually complicated this even further. Now, I'm sure a lot of you here get WhatsApp forwards, those of the kinds, good morning, good night, and not just those, but I'm sure a lot of you also get pro-government and anti-government kind of forwards. If you find yourselves contributing to further polarizing the debates, stop yourselves. Do not do it without checking for facts. Remember, it's important that we recognize our own labels, but it's even more important that we recognize the biases in others. If the empirical evidence points in a direction that is opposite to your long-held beliefs, be humble and replace your beliefs. Expose yourself to opposing viewpoints. I'm sure a lot of you here read The Hindu as the newspaper. Once in a while, try to read the other side of what people on the other side of the spectrum have to say. Read The Mint, for example, right? So read opinion pieces and essays that do not agree with what your long-held beliefs are. The next step is for each of us to acquire and develop a scientific temper. Now, Richard Feynman, a scientist, said, religion is a culture of faith. Science, on the other hand, is a culture of doubt. Scientific temper is about the spirit of inquiry, the right to question and be questioned. It's not just about learning science and technology, as you might think. You as engineers actually bear the burden of using analytical thinking when faced with difficult problems. Use reason over dogma, but also be humble and know that engineering doesn't teach one everything. While generalizations might work in engineering, they often do not when applied to social problems. So learn the right ideas, learn economic reasoning, learn social psychology, learn critical thinking, learn how governments work, how to make them more accountable, learn how to create and evaluate narratives. Most importantly, question. Question your parents, question your teachers, question the status quo, question not to offend, but to learn. And remember, if you are questioned, don't get offended, especially if you are in positions of authority. There is wisdom in knowing what you do not know. And that brings me to the fourth step in our training, which is to go beyond thinking in binaries. Now, people often think of policy problems and their solutions as good or bad, like a light switch, on or off. Was demonetization good? Was it bad? Is having a single GST good for the Indian economy? Is it bad? Think instead in terms of better or worse. You know, like a tuning knob. Remember, there are always trade-offs in every decision that is made. Learn how to calculate the costs and benefits of these trade-offs. Learn how to account for the information that you do not have. Be aware of your assumptions when you are evaluating solutions, when you're trying to solve a problem. Do not rush to conclusions, based on your labels and biases. Let your scientific temper prevail. And that takes us to the next step in our journey, which is that each one of us must participate in changing social norms. Now, we often think that social change can come about by changing laws alone. Social norms must actually change too. For what is a law after all but not ink on paper if all affected parties decide not to abide by it? Let me give you an example. There was a new law in Bangalore that mandated that all pillion riders on bikes must wear helmets, right? Now, if all pillion riders decide they do not want to wear helmets, which is often the case, they don't like it, and all traffic cops decide that they are happy taking small bribes from the riders and letting the violators off, we're not going to see much change in the situation, are we? Even though the law has changed. Think, why are there norms around rule violations? Social norms around bribing, littering, not educating the girl children, child marriage, etc. are very deep rooted in our society. We must all expect better from ourselves and from others. If you see someone engaging in a harmful social norm, call it out, at least point it to them. For only then people know that the society, the people around them expect a different behavior. The next step in our journey is to engage with politics. Now, politics is often conflated with being dirty. A lot of you here who organize Tech Fest, or my friends there at the back and here who've organized this TEDx conference, would know that it takes just 3 people, right? Whenever there are 3 people, there is politics. Don't have a disdain for politics. Actually, don't think that I'm encouraging you to become, to becoming politicians. But I'm not discouraging you either. Do that by all means if you wish to. However, don't just be armchair critics. Engage with your MLA, engage with your MP, engage with your local municipal councillor. It is very important that we engage with the member of the lowest rung of the republic. Politicians and political parties these days want to hear what the youth have to say. Tell them about your concerns. Now you can even use the internet. You don't have to go meet them. There are apps, there are websites. Raise your concerns. Hold your local bureaucrats and politicians to account. And last but not the least, vote. Vote in every single election. The next step in our journey is to find a balance between self-interest and public interest, between swartha and parartha, between thinking for yourself, your family, your friends, to thinking about the nation. Being on any extreme is not going to yield benefits for us as citizens of this nation. We must find a balance. We must stand up for something which is much bigger than ourselves. Contribute in whatever way you can. Volunteer, donate for causes that are close to your heart. You know, every social, professional, or personal interaction that we have is like a contract. We must ensure that we uphold and execute our end of the contract honestly. Take something as simple as following a traffic rule. Now, someone who violates a one-way road, which happens all the time in India, is not only breaking a law, they are also risking their own lives and others' lives, right? If there's a line, queue up. Think about the implications of not following even simple rules for your convenience. Remember, we as Indians share a common fate. Whatever the future holds, we all share it equally, and we must all run this marathon together. And that brings me to the last step in the journey, which is to have faith in the loftiness and the moral legitimacy of the Republic of India. Now, people often forget that India is not just a democracy. We are also a republic. By that I mean, we have a constitution, parts of which are immutable. Our constitution guarantees fundamental rights to every citizen, which no government can take away. In that sense, the republic actually protects the democracy from becoming a dangerous place. The constitution guarantees our liberty and upholds our pluralism. Now, you would be surprised to know that all the other constitutions, when they were created, preserved the society as it were. Indian constitution, on the other hand, when it was drafted, was way ahead of its times. In 1950, when it was created, it imagined a society that was way more progressive than at the time that existed. It was progressive even by Western contemporary standards. It broke from the inequities of the past. It gave equal rights to all men and women. In that sense, our constitution brought about a social revolution. Be proud of the Republic of India. Remember, I said that changing India is a marathon and that we must all run it together. It will take not just short bursts of energy, like a sprint, but long and sustained effort. Progress and prosperity do not originate in vacuum. It will take the wisdom of the old and the strength and determination of the youth. And you, as the strong youth of India, hold the key to our transformation.